Great to be back with you for another Facebook Live. I am Ellen Nauman, your resident dog trainer. I am a certified professional dog trainer and a certified behavior adjustment training instructor.
And I'm Irit Bloom. I'm also a certified professional dog trainer, and I'm a certified dog behavior consultant, among other certifications.
And the reason why we bring up that we are certified professional dog trainers is that it's really important when you are working with the trainer that you look for someone who is certified, that has the qualifications. Oftentimes you'll see the letters CPDT after their name. So look for that at the very least when choosing your dog trainer. We're so glad to be with you today. We're going to discuss a lot of important stuff. To start, we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping since we are giving you some advice today.
So, I would just like to point out that the views and opinions that we express during this Facebook Live event are for general purposes only. They do not necessarily apply to any particular situation or any particular pet. We would like to encourage you, if you are experiencing any issues with your pet, to please consult with a certified animal trainer, a veterinarian, or another suitable pet care professional.
Yeah, super, super important. But we are excited today to give you some tips and some advice on your pets outside during the summer months. I mean, summer is certainly upon us.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, 116 in Las Vegas, 120.
120 in Phoenix last week.
Yeah, really, really hot. So it's really important that we are proactive in preventing our pets from having any kind of physical harm during the heat season or emotional distress. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So let's first start talking about the actual temperatures and how the heat can affect our dogs
and our cats.
And our cats,
yes,
for sure. So the first thing that we wanted to discuss is how can you tell if your pet is overheated? What are some of the signs, what's some of the body language that you might see in your dog or your cat?
Yeah.
They're very actually similar.
Quite similar, yes.
So one of the first things to notice would be panting, unusual panting.
This is especially true in cats who don't normally pant. If your cat is panting, your cat is probably very overheated.
Yeah, lots going on with the mouth is probably your best indication of the temperature that your animal is experiencing. Because dogs don't sweat. They're not like us. They might sweat a little bit out of their pads, but that's pretty much it. So they can retain all of the heat that they're experiencing externally in the environment. That's why we don't leave our dogs in cars ever if it's ever over 70 degrees.
Right.
It takes like 10 minutes for the car to
heat up, and it can heat up to 160 degrees if it's in the sun, which is really something to think about. Makes Phoenix last week look cool.
Yeah. So yeah, don't leave your animals in the car unless you plan to leave the car running with the air conditioning on. That would be the only exception. Otherwise, just don't plan on it. So if your dog is experiencing being overheated, or your cat, we're going to focus a little bit on the mouth. Panting, unusual panting. The tongue for a dog will often come out and hang out. Sometimes you'll see a little curve at the end. It'll look like a spatula tongue. They're dehydrated. They're in need of some water. They're in need of a way of cooling down. How about a cat's tongue?
Cats would be the same general principle, although you won't tend to see that spatulate tongue, but something you might notice in either a dog or a cat for that matter. So if your cat is panting, you've already probably got an overheated cat, which isn't always the case with dogs. But what you may also notice is that the color of the tongue and the color of the gums has changed. It will usually get darker as the animal gets more dehydrated. So we rely on you to know what color your cat or dog's tongue normally is, but if it's normally sort of a nice light pink and you notice that it's sort of a more intense red or it's getting a little purple, those are all things that might indicate dehydration.
Yeah, good point. And same with your dogs, to notice their gums.
Yes.
For the cats as well, okay? So get to know the color of the gums of your animal, and if you see a change in the gums. If the gums are really dry, if the mouth itself is really dry, that's something to take into consideration. Any other signs that we should point out of being overheated?
In the mouth area,
No,
not so much. But so one thing is, as Ellen mentioned, both cats and dogs can sweat through the pads of their feet, but they don't do it very often. If you're noticing that your pet is leaving wet footprints, then chances are your pet is actually very overheated at that point. For them to be sweating through the pads of their feet means that they are severely overheated, and that's the point where you have to immediately take them to someplace and help them cool down, which we'll talk about how to cool down in just a minute. But so look for that. If you're walking your dog and they're leaving little wet paw prints, that's a bad sign. If your cat is leaving wet paw prints, whether you're out on a walk or just out on the patio, that is not a good sign. It generally means that they are really, really overheated.
Yeah, and they'll start to get really lethargic too.
Yes.
So, but your goal is to never even get to that point.
Exactly.
If you do start to see some of these signs, or if you just it's hot out and you feel underneath your dog's
the armpit,
for
yeah.
or their belly, or in the groin area, or even their ears. If that feels warm to you, what I like to suggest is to take a paper towel and just run some water over it, and place the paper towel in those kind of hot spots to help cool them off. You'll notice the paper towel will actually kind of draw out some of that heat. Make sure your dog gets water. It doesn't necessarily need to be ice cold water, but cool water, and allow them to have that to drink to help cool themselves down.
Yeah, and it's
same
essentially the same with cats, the same parts of the body, the belly, those areas where the limbs join the body, the ears, those are all areas where you can apply a cloth paper towel that's been soaked in water. You don't really want it to be ice cold because that can actually shock the system a little bit. You want it to just be sort of
cool,
room temperature or a little cooler.
Yeah.
And same as with dogs, essentially. And your cat's not necessarily going to love you putting a piece of cold, wet cloth on them, but it's for their own good. And if you can help them out that way, especially if they're already overheated, they'll probably tolerate it reasonably well.
But speak with your vet. Get with your vet, get to know your dog, get to know your cat really, really well, and be ready to help them in the case of an emergency. But again, going back to preventing. So a lot of it's just real common sense. We talked about not leaving them in the car. Feel the ground, feel the pavement. We are actually near the ocean. We saw a couple people walking their dog. Well, this is the lagoon, and we're near the airport. You might hear some planes. But the ocean's right over there. And when we were coming in, we saw somebody walking their dog along the sand. And even though it's fairly cool here in Los Angeles, in this particular spot of Los Angeles, the sun's been beating down on that sand all day long. And so that's probably really hot for their pad. So if you can't go barefoot, your dog certainly should not be walking along with you on whatever surface that might be. And I'm going to say the same as for the cats.
Same true for cats. And something that I advise my clients to do is when you go outside, now, grass doesn't tend to get so hot, but if you're on another surface and you're thinking, I don't know if this is cool enough or if it's going to hurt my pet's paws, whether that's a cat or a dog, literally take your hand, put it down on the ground. If this feels hot to your hand and you're like, ooh, I don't want to step on that, I don't want to touch that, then they definitely should not be stepping on it. Now, as it happens, this grass is very cool because we're in the shade.
Yeah.
So if we had a dog with us, this would be a good spot.
That would be a great spot. If you are going to take your dog out for a walk, or even your cat, you might have some tips if you're going to walk your cat. But let's say you're going to do that. Again, common sense. When your fetch person comes, maybe during the summer months, your fetch dog walker is going to come a little earlier or maybe a little later. Or if they do come during the day, give them permission to do a very, very short walk with lots of sniffing. Last Facebook Live we did, we talked about food puzzles and mental stimulation. So you might, if you're planning for walks in the middle of the day and it's 120, that's just not a possibility, right? So take a look at our Facebook Live from last month and get some ideas for some mental stimulation. It's just as good for the dogs, and you're not going to risk burning their pads or having them become overheated or anything like that, especially dogs that have really short noses. So your pugs and your bulldogs, Shar-Peis,
Pekingese,
so
dogs like that with the relatively flat faces.
You know it if you've got a dog that's got a flat face. Really, really be super, super sensitive to their exposure in the heat, the duration of their walk. That can be real dangerous real fast for those guys.
Yeah. And a good sort of general rule to keep in mind is if you're noticing your dog or cat, for that matter, overheating after being outside for, say, 15 minutes, make sure the next time you take them out, you only take them out for 10.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to even get close to that level where they're starting to get a little distressed. Okay, we can do 5 minutes less than that next time.
Yeah, for sure. And they're not going to want to be out in that anyway.
No, they're really not.
On your walk, You know, the summer brings about, you know, some great activities for us to do with our animals. A lot of folks are hiking more, going to the parks more. And so just being outdoors with our pets, it's a lot of fun. And we want to focus on that too, but it's important to be aware of the environment. So whether you're walking in your neighborhood or you've come to a park setting like this or you're out on a trail, there are some things to look for. The number one thing right now is foxtails.
I'm going to go grab one because
they're everywhere. They're everywhere. They're in every neighborhood. They're certainly on all the trails. And they can be such a hazard. They can be deadly, unfortunately, to your animals. Arit's going to show a
So
picture.
even here in this super grassy spot, we've got a bunch of foxtails. Now what happens with these is one of these little barbs, let me see if I can pull it out safely because they do actually hurt a little. One of these barbs comes out, and I might not be able to pull one out, we'll see. And they're like little tiny, if you look really closely, I'll try to post a photo later because I'm not sure I'm going to actually be able to get the foxtail out. Oh, here we go. They look like little tiny arrows. Do you see that? How there's a little point. And what they do is they worm their way through the fur and into the animal. And if they get far enough into the animal, they have to be surgically removed. So we're talking expensive, unpleasant, you name it, it's not a good thing. So that's what the little barb looks like. So anytime I take an animal out in this kind of environment where I know that there are foxtails, I always check the animal as soon as we get home. Let's get it out of their fur before it burrows its way in.
Yeah, check their pads, especially those of you who might have labradoodles or poodles. You know, and if the coat of your dog or cat, because cats get these too, any animal can get it, right?
Absolutely.
If it's a light colored coat, as you can see, the foxtail when it's dry is very light colored. So really make sure to check in between their pads, in between their toenails.
Check their ears too.
Yep. Maybe check around their eyes, their nose.
Yep.
If you notice your animal has sniffed and all of a sudden they've got a seed up their nose, they're going to be sneezing quite a bit, they're going to be pawing at their nose quite a bit, I would say go to the vet immediately.
Yes, right away. Don't even stop and think about it.
Yeah, yeah. So look for those foxtails, especially Futch dog walkers, because they are in abundance. But if you're out on the trails, it can be so enjoyable. One of the other hazards, probably dogs on trails more than cats, is going to be snakes, rattlesnakes. There's a lot of them out there this year, especially here in California, and I'm sure some of the other, states. But there's also poisonous states.
There's
all over.
poisonous snakes everywhere in the United States. They're going to be in greater abundance during this time of year, and everywhere in the world, for that matter. In case you're watching us from an international spot.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
some folks. Do we have a question?
No, we're good.
Okay. So some folks have a question or wanted to know if the rattlesnake vaccination, how that works and what can happen. If your animal does get bit by a rattlesnake, God forbid, and they've had the vaccination, it just kind of helps to slow down the time between the bite and the toxins and the poison really starting to do the damage. It gives you a little bit of extra time to get to an emergency vet.
yeah, so it's not that your dog or cat gets bitten and they've had the vaccine and you don't have to worry about it. It's that it gives you that extra half hour to get the animal loaded in your vehicle and to a place where they have the anti-venom, which not every veterinary hospital does. So it can make the difference between life and death or serious injury and being healthy, but it's not going to prevent the problem. You still need the anti-venom.
And check with a certified professional dog trainer who does snake avoidance training using positive reinforcement. There's not a whole lot of us out there that do that, but there are a few. So do look for positive reinforcement training when it comes to snake avoidance. But apply some common sense. Rock piles, bushes. If your dog is off leash and you see them heading towards that's a real dangerous spot. That's where those snakes are usually, lurking. If you see one on a trail, just stop, wait, figure it out. Maybe you turn around and just go the other way.
Yeah.
And just avoid that altogether.
Yeah, if you respect their space, they will respect your space. That's what it comes down to. The snakes don't want to bite you.
Yeah.
But they will if you or your dog or your cat gets too close. Now, this can also be a hazard to your pets in a yard. So if you have a yard that is close to open land or close to an area where there are snakes, you might find that some of the snakes are getting into your yard. So you might consider putting up something that's called snake fencing. It's sort of a particularly fine mesh fencing, and you bury it about a foot underground or 2 feet underground. And get that professionally installed so that you know that you can have your pet out in the yard without worrying about what else might be out there.
That's a good point, because I've had rattlesnake in the yard, not on the trails. Tony's helping us out with our Facebook Live. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Tony. You're fabulous.
Walking me back down.
We're encroaching on your personal space.
That's right.
Well, on that note, let's stick to having outdoor adventures with our animals. So, many of you may live near bodies of water. Giardia is a parasite that can be in streams. If you live near a stream, you probably already know that, or lakes. So just be very aware of whether or not your animal's ingesting water that is in a lake or a pond or a running stream.
And even a shared water bowl, which you're going to see more of during the summer. And I'm not saying don't let your dog drink out of a shared water bowl, but if it kind of looks muddy, maybe avoid that one.
Yeah. And because Giardia is also a parasite that can transfer to humans, so it's a good one to avoid.
Avoid, definitely.
Other parasites, obviously fleas and ticks. They are out in abundance because in California we hallelujah, got a lot of rain, but with that we've got a little bit more fleas and a lot more ticks out there. So the preventative medicines that are out there, or treatments I should say, there's many. Get with your vet to decide which one is best for your dog or cat.
And make sure if you have a household that has both dogs and cats, you make sure your veterinarian is aware of that, because some of the flea and tick meds that are suitable for dogs are actually poisonous to cats. And so you don't even want a housemate dog to have it because it could affect the cat. So just make sure you let your veterinarian know if you have a shared household with cats and dogs.
Yeah, and if you don't like the topical that's available now, there are tablets that you can provide to your animal, which makes it a little less messy and maybe even a little bit, well, whatever it is, it's
your
not
veterinarian,
topical.
your veterinarian can give you all the information you need to make the right choice for your household.
If it's a tick and you have found a tick on your animal, I love a product.
We both love this,
It's called the Ticked Off Remover, and I think Fetch is going to maybe post a picture of that on our Facebook Live. I've always gotten ticks off 100% using this little device. It's like a little spoon with a V.
With a notch cut out of it,
So remove the tick. If you live in an area where there might be Lyme disease, and many of us do now, it's more widespread.
Yes.
For your cats and your dogs, save the tick if you'd like. In the event you would need to get it tested. So, and in a plastic bag.
Yeah, and I was going to say the tip is make sure you enclose it in something that it can't crawl out of, because they are escape artists, those ticks.
I hate ticks.
They're pretty, and please don't flush them down the toilet, because if you do flush a tick down the toilet, it will survive the entire experience and come out somewhere else and crawl up onto the bank. They're really very hardy little creatures.
They'll be here long after
They'll be here long after we are, exactly. They're waiting until we're all gone.
Cockroaches and ticks.
Yeah, right? If you use a pesticide in your home because of the insects that are out there, and Reed has a really neat story I wanted to share real quick with you guys about how cats can affect the ecosystem. Feral cats affect the ecosystem. But, be real careful. I mean, again, common sense to not, if you have a lawn fertilizer that you're applying, if you have gardeners that come in, or if you have a service that sprays to keep out rodents or ants really kind of come into play much more in summer. Be super, super mindful of the access that your dog or cat might have to that area where it's been sprayed. They can be really, pretty dangerous.
And as a general rule, something to remember is cats are more sensitive to chemicals than dogs. It's not true with every single thing, but it's a good general rule. So if whatever it is that's being used is safe for your cat, it's probably safe for your dog, but not necessarily what's safe for your dog. That might not be safe for your cat. So just keep that in mind and make sure that whoever's coming in and doing the spraying is aware of the animals you have in the household and lets you know exactly what you need to do to keep them safe.
And Fetch dog walkers. When you are out walking, a lot of people will just scatter fertilizer. And there's the little white pellets on the sidewalk. So just be aware of that when you're walking the dogs, and just kind of avoid that if you can. But let's say you're fortunate enough you live You can go to the ocean, or you can go to a lake, or you can go to a concert in the park. What are some good tips for people if they want to take their animal to an outdoor activity, street fair?
So the first thing is you got to keep in mind whether or not your animal is comfortable. So I'll talk about dogs specifically because most people don't take their cats out and about as much, so we'll focus on dogs.
That's a party.
If you do have cats, learn the signs that your cat is stressed. And I'll say actually most cat owners are pretty in tune with whether their cats are stressed or not. But sometimes dog owners are not as keyed into the little tiny signs. Dogs give a lot of very subtle signals that they're stressed. And so, it could be things like suddenly you're seeing the white of your dog's eye. That usually means your dog is anxious, stressed, afraid of the situation. They might actually start panting more, even though it hasn't gotten any hotter. They'll do things like turning away or cringing, or their spine will get like this. Those are sort of more obvious signs, but these are all things to look for. So you've gone out and you're looking to have a fun day with your dog, and your dog's like, oh my gosh, the noise, the people. So remember that in the end, you want to be having fun with your pet, and if your pet's not having fun, maybe you're better off leaving your pet at home.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I was going to bring Skittles today, and we decided it's probably best that he just stay home. It's less stressful. I mean, he would enjoy this spot, but we weren't really sure where we were going to land, and we weren't sure what the temperature was. And again, so I just kind of used common sense and thought, it's probably best that Skittles stays home today.
Exactly.
But as Arit pointed out, the noise. If you're going to go to a concert in the park, if you're going to go to a street fair, if you're going to go to the county fairgrounds, just be super, super aware of what your dog looks like when he or she is stressed. Stress yawn. We did a Facebook monthly tip about stress yawns.
Which cats also do.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
And we also did a Facebook Live on canine body language. So if you want, you can go back and review that. Really recognize those signs so that your dog doesn't have to end up barking and lunging and growling to say, hey, I am not comfortable here. They'll let you know in other ways before that. And if you want to test it out, go to a park. Just go to a park where there might be some families, having picnics and just exploring, and see how your dog does around that environment before you take them to a full-on, street fair where you're passing vendors.
Right, and there's hundreds of people and dozens of dogs. Yeah.
If you choose to have a party in your backyard, or you go to somebody's house, be aware of foods. Again, some that are toxic. Grapes are really popular in the summer. Grapes are poisonous to dogs. Alcohol, certainly. Chocolate, caffeine.
And then a lot of things are just too rich for them. Like, you wind up with suddenly a dog who's eaten, I don't know, a barbecued pork rib, and then they're gonna feel sick. They can even get pancreatitis. You really don't want to put them in that situation. That applies to your cats too. Make sure your cats aren't getting in everyone's food during the party.
No cooked bones.
Yes.
So if you've barbecued that rack of ribs and they're tasty, do not give one to your dog, because cooked bones can cut their throats. It can do a whole lot of damage in their digestive tracts.
Yeah, they get all brittle and they splinter.
Yeah. Raw bones, no problem. Cooked bones, big problem.
Yeah.
And same for cats.
Yes.
Same for cats.
Although cats will not tend to eat quite the same size of bone.
If you're lucky enough to have a pool and you want to introduce your dog to a pool, or you have a brand new puppy and you want your puppy to get used to the pool, do so gradually. Let's talk a little bit about that, because safety is really important too when it comes to the pool. We want our dogs to know how to get into the pool properly and how to get out safely.
Yeah, getting out is the most important thing, because if your dog gets disoriented in the water or falls in accidentally because everyone's roughhousing outside the pool, you want your dog to be able to say, oh, that corner, that's where I go. So that's the first thing you teach, is this is where you go to get out.
Because when dogs drown, it's not because they're not swimming, they don't know how to get out, and then they just end up becoming too tired and exhausted. So do not throw your dog into the pool to see if it will swim. It's just like a human. You would never ever do that. Just allow them to gradually explore. Maybe they just look at the pool for a while. Maybe they dip their toes in the water. Maybe you're sitting on the steps with them. Just be very patient in introducing that.
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Another thing you can try, by the way, if you do have a dog who's very hesitant to get in the pool, and I'm assuming most of you are not taking your cats in the pool, so we'll just stick to dogs. And you have a dog who's really wiry and muscular and doesn't float very well, there are actually doggy life vests.
Good point.
And that can help them feel more comfortable because they get a little bit more buoyancy. Because essentially the way dogs swim is by trying to walk or trot in the water, and it takes quite a bit of effort if you've ever done the doggy paddle yourself. So you want to make it a little easier for them and not make them have to use so much energy if they're one of those really lean dogs.
That's a great point. And if you're going boating is very popular during the
Yes.
summertime. Make sure your dog is wearing a vest. I've rescued a dog that flew out of a boat.
Wow.
I jumped out of the boat and the dog's like, ah, and I'm like, ah. It's almost like, rescuing a human, I guess, on some level, is that they're panicking and you're trying not to panic. And it was quite the scene. Had the dog had a life vest on, it would have remained buoyant and they could have scooped the dog up and
It would have been a
yeah.
lot
So
easier.
make sure your dog's wearing a life vest if you're going to go out boating with your dog. There's so much to do this summer with our animals. It's a lot of fun to be outdoors with our dogs and our
Yes.
cats. We know dogs go for walks. Why don't you talk a little bit about cats on a walk, and then we'll close our Facebook Live for today.
So things to consider, and I'll say this really briefly. If you have your cat outdoors and your cat is not in any way enclosed or controlled, your cat's going to actually do quite a bit of damage to the environment, mostly by killing birds. And the problem is the cats kill the birds, and the birds are the ones who eat all the mosquitoes and the other annoying insects. And because there's not enough birds to eat the insects, the insect population comes up, and then all of a sudden we're dealing with Zika virus or malaria, not so much in this part of the world. And it's this chain of events that starts with too many cats that are outdoors. Now, obviously, some of these cats will be feral cats. But if you have your own house cat, rather than have them be an outdoor cat, they're doing damage to the environment. They're also at risk of getting hit by a car or being eaten by some kind of predator. I would suggest you teach your cat how to walk on leash. Now, this is not as easy of a process as it is with dogs, and I don't really have time to go into it too fully. But I'll just say that you want to use positive reinforcement. Start by just getting the cat used to even wearing a harness and make everything really low key. You can feed the cat meals on top of the harness and then just sort of drape the harness over the cat and then feed the cat a meal. And the first time you do put the harness on, make sure again you either play with the cat for a while or feed a meal and then take it off so they get used to that feeling. Because it's not something that most cats have done since a young age. And then when you take them for a walk, you're going to mostly follow the cat. But it is a good idea to teach your cat either to target something or to come to you when you call. That'll make the leash walking a lot easier. And the last really quick tip I'll say is if you have a kitten and you think you might ever take that kitten for walks, start now, because it's easier with a kitten than with an adult cat.
I think that would be so fun, so awesome to take your cat for a walk. I think
It is.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
Fetch, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a lot of fun. We hope you have a really fantastic June, that you stay cool, that you have a great time with your animals outside, and that you're being safe with your dog and your cat, your rabbit, whatever animal is your companion animal. Keep them safe, keep yourself safe, and we will...
And I'm just going to really quickly remind you all that the views and opinions we've expressed are for general purposes only and do not necessarily apply to your particular situation or pet. If you're experiencing issues, do consult a certified animal trainer or your veterinarian or the suitable type of pet care professional.
Yeah, and if you've got a question on like who you should seek out in your area, post on our post on Fetch in this Facebook Live.
Yeah,
and Arit and I will
we'll-
take a look and we'll find
We'll
somebody.
give you
in your
some
area.
tips. Yeah.
All right, Fetch.
All right, thank you so much.
We'll
Thank
see you
you.
again.